Hi. So there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is this is loosely about energy, boring. The good news is that we hope, we found one or two ways to make it slightly more interesting. So what does energy feel like for consumers at the moment? Well, a bit like this.
Okay, thanks very much. Happy to help. Hiya, sorry for the wait.
Should I avoid those?
Oh, no, it's fine, I do that. That, these, and that. Okay, right. Let's have a think.
We haven't scanned anything, have we?
Oh, no, we don't scan it. We estimate. 48 pounds. Nope, scrap that. It's heavier than I thought. 78 pounds. I estimate that to be about 17 pounds.
Estimate?
We just estimate. We don't just estimate how much it's going to cost. If it works out that it's actually worth more, then when you come back, we'll overestimate next time, so it levels out. That's the way the system works.
Can I speak to your manager? Yeah.
Janice, just give me a hand really quick.
But once he has on the estimate, like that's the price. Yeah.
Like fixed prices that it says on the company on a barcode.
So that was where I got stuck.
If you haven't used all the stuff, we will give you money back. Say like if you just kept like 2 sardines back, we would give you money when you came back.
She just wants to do like I want to do, is have my items scanned. I want to pay the price and take them away.
That way madness lies. Do you know what I mean?
No, I don't. I think madness lies in your system.
Do you want him to make the sound? Like, boop. It's just an estimation at the end of the day.
We'll send you the total bill in the post, okay? And I estimate that'll come to you in 2, maybe 3 days.
We don't estimate our shopping bills, so why do we estimate our energy bills? By 2020, every home in Britain can upgrade to a smart meter.
If you went elsewhere, it'd just be the same.
Concept. Okay, thanks very much. Happy to help.
So we thought we were going to cause a riot in that supermarket. These are real people in a supermarket up in North London. Actually, at one point, there's a Chinese lady who said something, and we had to get a translator in to check that she wasn't being absolutely obscene in what she said. But in fact, she just said something like, "Does anyone know where the cornflakes are?" or something. So, but let's be careful before we aired it. So, why estimate when you can be accurate? It sounds like a really, really obvious question, doesn't it? But the truth is that this actually is what happens to consumers every day of their lives when they're estimating their energy bills. They have no idea what it costs or what they're using or what the bill is going to be, or even the units that it's charged in. So it's kind of deeply frustrating and kind of the last big analog industry in Britain. Now, this is where Smart Energy GB then comes in. So the good news for consumers is that every single household in Britain is going to change. So we're going to go from this kind of old style energy meters. This is based on kind of Victorian technology that everyone has under their stairs or outside their front doors. So old analog Victorian, really out-of-date technology to something which is a new world of smart meters, so digitising the energy industry and providing consumers with accurate bills and allowing them to see what they're using in pounds and pence. And there are lots of benefits of doing this for consumers beyond accurate bills, which I'll come to. But the thing for us is that this is a very, very difficult journey to get consumers to, because where we started, energy is not actually something that people find enormously interesting, to say the least. In fact, they're pretty disengaged by it. So there were some big bumps in the road for us and some unique challenges on the route to getting everybody to adopt a smart meter. Because whilst it is something that the government have mandated energy suppliers to go to all reasonable lengths to install in consumers' homes, it is something which, for the consumer, you can take the choice to do or not to do. And so you will definitely be offered one by 2020, but the government wants you to say yes. And that's a really important point, because in countries where this has happened before, and there's an important behaviour change point here, I think, in countries where this has happened before and the replacement of this technology has been mandated, you don't get all of the behaviour change benefits that the government expects us to get, if you just fit and forget, as it were. So all of the benefits that come from the system around being engaged with energy, seeing what you're using, having the information that you need to cut your bills, to cut your energy use, to make choices, to choose the right tariff for you, to reduce complaints into energy companies, all of those kind of things are all on the basis of your active engagement with the technology, rather than your kind of passive acceptance to put it under the floor. So from a marketing point of view, this provides us with big challenges, not least of all because it has to go into every home in Britain, and every home in Britain is different. And so we've got to come up with a campaign that speaks to everybody, regardless of their media use, their family makeup, their demographics, where they live, their social situation, their economic situation. Enormously varied country, and this has to work for absolutely everybody. But as big a challenge as that is, I think the key challenge that we face is that everybody that nobody cares about energy. So to say it's ultra low interest is to understate it, I think. To say it's low trust is perhaps to understate it. Effectively, we're talking about convincing every single home in Britain to do something they don't care about with somebody they do not trust. So Smart Energy GB does not install smart meters. That's the energy companies. So there's a relationship there, and we all know that relationship between consumer and energy company, for many reasons, is difficult. And it's a very sticky market. So what consumers are not doing in energy is changing suppliers every year and engaging on an annual basis with their suppliers from a switch point of view. Only 15% of people switched supplier in 2015. So big engagement challenges around this, and something that we need to think about. So how do we go about doing that? Well, I think there's a huge temptation in any kind of product marketing, and particularly in this kind of technology innovation, to jump straight to, well, what are the benefits for me as a consumer? And we often talk about removing constraints in marketing, and I think it's an odd thing to say, but for us, removing the constraint of the benefit was the first thing that we had to do in order to build this campaign. So it's not, because this is not just about brand preference. It's not like you're selling toothpaste where you can rely on an inherent kind of acceptance within consumers that they do need this product, and so you're talking about brand preference. You're trying to get people to choose your product over another one. In this, we're talking about something, as you saw up front, that consumers do not recognise that there is a need for change in the first place. So when you talk to consumers in focus groups about this, and you say, how do you feel about their energy? They kind of talk about it in the same way that they talk about the rain, which is to kind of go, well, it pisses me off, but I'm not entirely sure there's anything that I can do about it. So if you just jump straight to accurate bills and seeing what you're using in pounds and pence, then even though these benefits are compelling, they're not enough to break down the barriers, because the status quo is so powerful in a consumer's mind, and people are lazy, that they don't see the need for change. So you've got to start by setting up the problem, and removing that constraint opens up lots of different communication techniques and messages, which you wouldn't have if you just started to be pinned to the barriers. This is the tube map before they removed the constraint of scale, and you can see it's kind of virtually illegible. So this is my reference, right? The things that you think are really important in marketing terms, perhaps benefits, aren't always. So remove the constraint on those benefits. Now, the other thing about behaviour change and mass behaviour change on this scale is it pretty much always needs some kind of a villain. You need an enemy in the campaign in order for people to kind of to crowd around and to feel like this is something we can defeat together. Now, this provided us with another issue, which is, who is the villain in our campaign? It can't be the consumer, because a campaign that says stupid consumer, we're providing technology to help you be less stupid, is not going to cut it. And it can't be the energy company, because we can't go, big bad evil energy company, who do I phone in order to get the technology that's going to help me get my own back in this big bad energy company? Well, you have to phone the energy company. So we've got to do something in a way that doesn't blame the consumer and doesn't blame the energy company. So it only leaves us with one villain in the piece. And this came to us, and we're kind of coming to this thought, and we're sitting in lots and lots of focus groups, and and people started to talk about the energy in their homes itself as being out of control. And I remember one woman saying, I just feel like I don't understand the bill, and I don't know what appliances using what, and I feel like gas and electricity in my home is just totally out of control, and I have no way of understanding how I'm going to control it. So we thought, what if we make the fuel itself the villain? And this is how we launched it.
London's West End was plunged into darkness this evening.
Many businesses, including several theatres and cinemas,
There
were
was
affected.
chaos across London's West End this evening.
Yeah, A to G down here.
We're experiencing a few technical problems, nothing to worry about. We'll soon have everything under control. Where is it? No, you don't. Gotcha.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me apologise once again for the disruption to your evening. Like most of you, we've been having problems with Gaz and Lecky, but I'm delighted to tell you we've got them under control. Enjoy the upcoming feature. Thank you.
So, how do we get to Gaz and Lecky? Well, we put loads and loads and loads of ideas of the personification of gas and electricity through research, and there are some themes that came out which I think are kind of relevant for broader mass engagement campaigns of this kind. Firstly, it clearly had to be entertaining. You get the idea that we've seemed to have developed a bit of a taste for ambushing the public. It had to be entertaining, it had to feel contemporary, and it had to be something that went beyond spokespeople, because the campaign's got to last for such a long time, and certainly at the moment finding a spokesperson that is without scandal for any length of time seems to be particularly challenging. So we thought this has to be something which is ownable, and it has to be something which is flexible enough not just to be used by us, but to be used by partners in the campaign as well, be they energy companies or charities or community groups or government departments. So something that we could own, something we could use for the long term, something that had national appeal, and something which wasn't rooted in a particular culture. So important for us that this was multicultural, that it was not a typical 2.4 children house, because this has got to speak to every home in Britain. And actually, if you look at this and you look at characters in campaigns, there's a really interesting point on IP, which is that you will probably get two choices up front. One is to own the IP and one is to license the IP. And if you can, always own the IP, because we've used Gaz and Lecky in lots of different ways over the last couple of years, which we hadn't initially expected. And if we'd have been tied into an IP agreement up front, and I think that would have provided us with some challenges. The other important thing for us about Gaz and Lecky was that they provided us with an opportunity to launch them in non-traditional channels. So the nature of the rollout was very complex for us. It meant that not everybody would have access to a smart meter at the same time. So we had to launch these guys in static media, in out-of-home and also in radio, and support it digitally with the stuff that you just saw there. So it was actually only in July this year, a full 18 months after we launched Gaz and Lecky on the British public, that we managed to put them above the line in national TV. And when we did, this is what it looked like.
Let's get Gaz and Lecky under control. Smart meters are here. Visit smartenergygb.org.
So our research so far is that Gaz and Lecky are doing a pretty good job, and the estimation stuff you saw up front is doing a pretty good job of grabbing people's attention and getting awareness. So awareness of Gaz and Lecky in 18 months has gone from 0 to more than 64% of British adults, and it's beating all of its comparators in radio, in TV, in the out of home, in the print, for campaign recognition, message recall, and so on. So good news so far. The issue is only half of the issue, though. So the other issue that we have is one of behaviour change and of people actually using smart meters when they get them. And the issue in behaviour change is that people are lazy, and new habits are difficult to embed. And because Smart Energy GB doesn't control the installation process, it means that there are only a limited number of options for us to actively engage in that behaviour change journey. And we're currently putting through various behaviour change interventions through research. But I wanted to give you some headlines of the kind of stuff which is coming out of that research as being particularly important in behaviour change interventions. So to start with, make it a no-brainer. It sounds kind of obvious, but selecting those key benefits. So for us, it's control, it's accuracy, it's the fact that these are free installation. Selecting those most compelling benefits and putting those front and centre of those behaviour change interventions. The second is to tap into existing behaviours. So people are more likely to form new habits when those habits are an extension of things that they already do, rather than entirely new things that are alien to them. So tap into things that they're doing already and extend those as new habits instead of starting from scratch. And don't expect people to get this all in one go. So drip feeding the information is really, really important. People are more likely to engage over time and at their own pace, rather than expecting people to do all of this straight away in one go. Data is not enough. It's got to be relevant, it's got to be practical, it's got to be accessible, and it's got to be actionable. So just simply saying to people, the data shows that your energy use is above or below the average on your street, not good enough. You have to go further than that, and you have to personalise it. But there's a point on personalisation to remember, which is that there is a very fine line between personalisation and intrusion, and certainly for consumers. And at the moment, I think this is something that consumers are starting to feel quite acutely. So personalise it, but not so much that you go too fast. Even if you know a lot about somebody, you might want to think about where you draw the line in personalisation before it feels intrusive. So just briefly then, results. How's it going so far? 4 million meters have been installed. 80% of people who have one say that they've taken steps to reduce their energy use. 79% say they'd recommend it to others. 84% say they have a better idea of their energy use. So good for consumers, and some really interesting stuff from us. And I'll just leave you with these sum up thoughts. So it's been a huge learning curve for us. Here are the things that we think are really important then in behaviour change. Share the problem. Don't be tempted to just jump straight to those benefits. So this thing about removing yourself from the constraint of benefits, I think, is really important. Set up the problem. It doesn't need to be negative, but it does need to galvanise people. Humour is your ally. One of the most important points that we find in our continuous tracking is that people who find the advertising funny are more likely, significantly more likely, to take the key messages, to find this interesting, to pass it on, to talk positively about the product. So sometimes humour doesn't feel like a safe place for public engagement comms. It should be, it really works, and it's something that goes throughout our campaign. Think beyond traditional media. You've seen the stuff there that we did in the supermarket, in the cinema. Content that people want to consume with ad blockers and so on is more and more and more important. And we find that the organic reach of some of the stuff that we've done is enormous. And clearly you've got to seed it with some media money. But if it's content that people want to consume, and if it's content that people enjoy and want to share, then that's important. Embrace partners. Don't feel that you can do it all yourself. So we're working with an enormous number of charities, with energy companies, government departments, with community groups. These are all people whose credibility we can borrow and whose reach to the consumer we can access. And so doing it with partners is really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. It was awesome. We have time for a couple of questions. I see a gentleman there. If you'd like to say your name and ask your question.
Hi, it's Neil. I work for another behaviour change campaign, and I think one of the problems we have is, how do you reach people who don't believe that the problem exists in the first place? I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is why, so the first thing that I showed you is part of a strand of activity that we call Estimation Nation. And this is about framing the problem in everyday scenarios. So it's exactly you've got exactly the same problem we had, is that unless people realise it's a problem, the other advertising is not going to cut through to them, because they're just going to dismiss it and go, well, that's not relevant to me. So addressing the problem before addressing the benefits of your initial of your solution is really, really important. And it's difficult to do internally, because it sounds like something that you go, well, where are the benefits? So getting buy-in internally in order to do that stage of the activity, I think, is challenging. But addressing the problem and setting that up and comparing it with other areas of life where people would see that problem as being something they would recognise, for us has been the most important thing that we've done on that.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions at all? Here's one at the front. Hi.
Hello. What sort of a budget were you working on, and is it a 1-year campaign or a 3-year campaign? How did you sell it internally?
So the campaign is started in 2014 to all intents and purposes, was set up in 2013, started in 2014, and will run until 2020. It is the government mandated that Smart Energy GB would be set up in specific response to this problem. So the only thing that we do is this campaign. So we didn't have to get kind of buy-in for the need for the campaign. That was set down in the legislation for smart meters. The total budget for the campaign is in the region of £200 million across that whole period.
Any more? One here. Can I just slip one in? I'm fascinated. Usually rule one is pick your audience and target everything around them. In this case, were you prevented from doing that because the audience has to be everyone?
Yes and no. I mean, I think one of the big challenges for us is that we don't own the consumer journey. We don't own any consumer data. And so there are lots of things that you'll be hearing here today, which in terms of personalisation, for example, which simply aren't available to us. So I think we have to start with a broad campaign which targets everyone. But we have done a very in-depth and bespoke segmentation of consumers. So based on TGI attitudinal data, Acorn housing data, and census demographics. And being able to create 5 segments and then apply those segments across what we call an aptitude and attitude axis. So people who are predisposed to the technology but find adopting it very difficult, and people who would find adopting it quite easy but are not predisposed to this kind of technology. So we can place the consumers on that axis. We can then get down pretty accurately to a 4-part postcode level as to who is most likely to live in which house, and we can vary the local comms, so the out of home and so on, to meet the needs of those consumers, which is something we did first up particularly, where we were targeting early adopters and people who lived in properties which were more likely to be able to get it than not. But and we can certainly target very specifically in digital. So what you're seeing on your Facebook feed will be very different to what somebody else is seeing on their Facebook feed based on your own characteristics. So I think the answer is we've got to do both, and hopefully we are.
Hi. Did Gaz and Lecky feature across all the communications, or was there some informational aspects where they weren't included?
Yeah, so they feature. Gaz and Lecky is what we call our core strand of activity. So it's our overwhelming core campaign, and it has the highest reach. So it's really the only campaign that will reach everyone. Within that, we have the Estimation Nation strand, which is our B strand of activity, which supports that, which doesn't feature Gaz and Lecky. So that supermarket thing that we showed first, and there are several other ads in that kind of strand of activity. And then we have a strand of content which we call educational, which is like an origami education film. And we have a suite of those films which basically tell you everything that you need to know on your journey to getting a smart meter, and you can go more and more in depth. So we're able to retarget people who've seen the estimation with the Gaz and Lecky, and then retarget those people with specific education films. And where people have put in specific kind of search criteria for things that are addressed by a particular education film, we can target that at those people very specifically. But it's only Gaz and Lecky and Estimation Nation that run above the line. Everything else is digital.
I sense there may be plenty more questions, but we're out of time, so perhaps you can collar Gavin afterwards and put them to him directly. In the meantime, thanks, Gavin, for a really insightful speech.
Pleasure.
And at 3 o'clock, we'll hear from Brian E. Collingwood and Mark Campbell of QVC. But for the meantime, thanks, everybody. And thank you, Gavin.